opening up the Granby Planning Board meeting, February 13th, 5 o'clock, 2023. First order of business will be the minutes.
I think we should wait until the other board members show up for the minutes.
Okay. Okay, first on the agenda, other than the minutes and correspondence, we'll hold off on that. A&R, Parish Hill.
Good evening, Edward Chaplain, surveyor for the project. This was presented to you last year. The septic system is located on not attached to the parcel in front number 30, Parish Hill. After the plan was signed, the client and her sister wanted to make the lot smaller. Originally, the lot came up like this, so this sister objected to that, didn't want that property to go all the way to there, so we had brought it back to the toe of the fill, or the break in the toe, and the back toe of the fill. And that parcel has been reduced in size. Originally, it was 40,000 square feet. The lot line came back further, and I had 40,000 square feet the total. Because it's an encroachment, it's deemed not to be necessary to comply with the zoning at this point, or Title V.
So Ed, what was it, so what did the lot look like before?
Lot line came straight up to here, so it went like this.
And it was still part of this?
Correct.
Okay, so,
Yeah, right now this is owned by the two sisters, Alice and Frances.
okay. Does anybody take issue with this?
I see no issue. Ed came in and talked to us after we had signed the first plan about amending that plan to what Ed is showing today. And we
They have
did
not
this.
recorded the plan at the registry of deeds in Northampton, so.
I faintly remember the discussion.
I believe you said that you would endorse the plan without refiling the filing fee because the plan has not been recorded.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended plan by Turkey, White Town, and Chapel Lane Civil Engineers for the property owned by Alice M. Gagnon, Chouinard. Was it 30 Parish Hill Road?
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Did you just get a message?
My phone did vibrate. Yes.
Oh, Melissa should be here in 5.
Next two are mine.
too. Yeah.
Only four? Four copies?
Yep.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care, Ed. Got a wicked name for those?
I have one.
Did you get copies from the minutes?
Yes.
Well, we didn't approve the other minutes yet that we had last meeting. They in there?
Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no, it's,
Okay. It's coming from Long Meadow.
Okay, we've got a few minutes to kill. Why don't we, before the hearing, why don't we try and get some of these minutes out of the way?
Okay.
sounds good.
First set of minutes that need to be approved is meeting from September 26th. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the September 26th, 2022 minutes as written.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we now have the, before us, meeting minutes from October 17th, 2022. Has everybody had a chance to review these?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written, October 17th, 2022.
we have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have the minutes for November 21st, 2022. Has everybody had a chance to review these?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve November 21, 2022 minutes as written.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So, aboard, I watched the meeting from January 23rd, and there were comments about the September 19th minutes. So I looked at it, there is a replication of the 54R A&R, but the Alan Kotowitz A&R comment from the 12th was that it was going to be forwarded to the 19th, and the board took action on the 19th. And I think that's reflected in the minutes.
Oh. Yeah, and unfortunately, we never approved those.
No, because there was some
Not yet.
confusion.
Right, and we didn't approve any of, I think.
You
there were
approved the
three
first one, the August.
Yeah.
sets. So we're only missing one or two?
You're missing the 12th and the 19th. You were going to get some clarification. This is the clarification.
Okay. So do we want to make a motion to We can't see them.
No. Can you bring them to the next meeting?
Yeah,
Hard copies, and then we'll do it then, so then we have hard copies before us.
yeah.
Okay, before we went to the hearing, let's close our regular meeting. Someone wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the regular meeting and to
Reconvene.
reconvene at the end of the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Just want to read the... Sure.
Do you want to wait till 5:15 to open the hearing?
I've got 5:14 by the... Go ahead and open it. Okay, won't take any discussion by the time it's open.
So you want a motion to open?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing to consider the petition of Ken's Pet Resort LLC. Made the motion.
Okay, we made a motion to open the hearing. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So this is a continuation of the January 23rd hearing to consider the petition of Kim's Pet Resort LLC applicant, TNA Associates and Properties LLC owner, seeking special permit and site plan approval under sections 6.2 and 6.3 of the Granby zoning bylaws and applicable of section 3 regulations 3.5.3 services regarding a proposed pet care, pet-related service business at 220 West State Street and known as Assessor's Map 8B-B-1 in the town of Granby, Mass.
Okay, we continued the hearing to allow me to go take a site visit. I was curious on a couple things on parking and to get a feel for the logistics of where the pets could be walked. And where's that?
Not bad.
We have a copy of that. Ken, do we have a copy of that over there? The
Which?
site plan?
No, these are not site plan, these are conservation.
I don't think there's anything.
There's nothing in here. Well, anyway, my walkthrough satisfied my concerns with parking. I know Anita was present as well. Did you have any further comments?
No, I agree with
Okay. So that being said, is there any further discussion? Pardon me? I can't hear you.
What were your findings?
That they had adequate parking, the way that was laid out in the plan. Handicap, they had the handicap ramp. That was basically it. I was just concerned that they had enough parking there.
So should we have some discussion on
Any conditions?
conditions?
The only condition that I've got a concern with is the railing. It's a building code issue, but because it's outside, it's also a site plan issue, and I believe there should be some rails. So the condition that I would like to see placed on this project would be that the building inspector signs off on a railing for the handicap ramp. Other than that, I found no issue with the site plan.
How about policing of where the pets are allowed to roam and disposal of the waste.
So it's my opinion that it should be contained to the area where the septic system and leach field are. It's already a waste disposal area, and that any waste is picked up on a daily basis.
And disposed of off property.
Correct. Well, no, not on a daily basis. I'll leave it up to them to dispose of it as required, you know.
Are they gonna fence the area?
Unfortunately, we've already closed the public input portion of this meeting, so we can't take any more input from the public. The public had their opportunity a couple of weeks ago, and we had to close that portion of the hearing.
I thought this was a continuation of the public hearing.
It was a continuation of our conversation. The public portion of it was voted on and closed that evening.
Anybody else?
I don't have anything else.
So, with that being said, any of the pets that are being walked should be leashed, not let to roam on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
discussion, we're supposed to,
Well, no,
we're supposed to talk about this.
No,
No,
that's-
no, absolutely. I mean, I would say if it is a fenced-in area, then they would not have to be leashed. But if it is an unfenced-in area, absolutely, you know, I would say, you know, they need to be leashed. Waste needs to be disposed of properly.
I mean, the Board of Health already said that it was fine, that would be their purview, right?
That'd be their,
Probably,
yeah,
so-
purview. Yep.
Any further discussion? Okay. Melissa, I'll remind you.
Yep.
Okay. There's no further discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the project as presented with the conditions that were listed this evening.
One being,
The
Leash.
handicap railing, or to make sure that the handicap ramp falls under, or is up to building code standards.
correct,
Number two, that the area where the dogs or the pets are allowed to walk outside be policed and waste disposed of. Number three, it can only be in the area of the septic system. And there's a fourth one. What's the fourth one?
They had some noise concerns,
Leash.
they want towers, I was looking at.
and they need to be leashed. All the pets need to be up on leash.
Yep.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Mr. Chair,
All those in favor?
Oh, Jim.
I just want to confirm the conditions.
Sure.
So, one condition, handicap ramp is up to building code standards.
Correct.
Pets should be leashed, waste should be disposed of properly,
Daily.
daily. Properly and daily. Waste should be contained to area where leach field and septic system are located.
Correct.
And what was the fourth one?
We were gonna say something about, all parking must be on-site, no off-street, or no on-street parking.
That's the fourth condition?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first condition, handicap ramp is up to building code standards. Pets should be leashed, Waste should be disposed of properly and daily. Waste should be contained to area where leach field and septic system are located. No on-street parking.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Who's gonna police the off-street
The,
parking?
there'll be a letter sent out with the conditions, and there's a 20-day, once you receive the letter, there's a 20-day hold process.
Correct.
Can I just say something really quickly?
You can in a minute. Okay, we all clear?
Yeah.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
One second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would like to just say that at the previous public hearing, a lot of new information came out about what the intended activity on the premise was going to be, which was not previously expressed in the previously recorded meeting or anywhere in the application. And so it was actually during that public hearing that a lot of the abutters who were present were learning for the first time about some of the details of the business. So we didn't really have an opportunity to prepare how we would feel about this. Like, for example, Monday through Saturday, 8 to 6 hours, and the amount of dogs that would be washed each day, and so on and so forth. So I don't quite feel as though the process gave the abutters the an adequate amount of time to give a good response. We had the application, which was very limited and vague. And in each subsequent hearing, more details about what the actual business would be were revealed that hadn't been previously revealed. So my only concern, I don't want to stop anyone's business, I don't want to torture anyone, I want people to be able to make money and have their business there. My only concern is I just want to know exactly what they're doing, and I just don't want it to evolve over time into a use that's actually prohibited, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to have some more.
Well,
I'm still just not really clear on what they're planning to do.
first of all, this body is responsible for site plan review, okay, and whether it meets the zoning bylaws. And it, obviously, the board feels it does. What goes on inside the building as far as grooming and how many, you know, that's, if they've been approved to do that. Anything that exceeds that, then it's up to code enforcement to address it. If they're parking on the street, then that complaint goes to code enforcement, and they have to address it.
Will there be
So-
signs saying do not?
No.
No, that's not,
That's not our job
Yeah,
to put those signs
in
in,
the
but
water.
yeah.
so, no, we did not put that as a condition. That would be something the town would have to do. So, in other words, the way it would probably work is that if there was a concern or there was on-street parking, the complaint would go to code enforcement, and then code enforcement would probably have those signs installed, because it's on public property, town property.
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant, but I don't even know where I'd go. If I was enforcement.
Yeah, right to the town hall. The building inspector is our code enforcement officer.
So I wouldn't go to the police department.
You could go to the police department, and, but they would probably, recommend it to the code enforcement. There may be ordinances in town that would address that as well, that maybe the PD would take care of it, address it.
Because I live very near that street where they come in on off of 202. And those people come in there at 45, sometimes 50 miles an hour. I'm afraid sometimes just to drive out of my own driveway.
Sure.
So.
I can understand that concern. It's like that all over
Getting out of
town.
their cars with their pet, you know, parking along the street there would be extremely.
Again, the permit was issued based on them, the applicant using the parking lot,
Yeah,
period. No off-street parking,
okay.
on-street
On
parking. On-street parking.
I came late, so I didn't know. Were any conditions put on the hours in
No.
operation? I know they did a presentation, but a lot of times conditions are to make sure that they meet with their presentation with the hours they give. So they don't say it would be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and then they're open Saturdays and Sundays all day, or on holidays as well, so that there's a condition to be enforced in the.
We did not make that a condition, but they said they were only going to be open Monday through Saturday.
Correct, but there's no condition, so without conditions, they could change their operation, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. This is not a condition of the permit, that's all. All I'm saying is hold them to the conditions by making that a condition, whatever they said they're going to do, make that a condition, so that it doesn't all of a sudden open up on Sundays, or it's open at 10 o'clock at night, you know, in terms of, because there's nothing in the permit that
Correct.
limits their hours, so.
Well, any more than, some of the other businesses. There's no conditions on John Center Pharmacy.
No, this is a special permit.
Correct.
Unlike most other, if you have it as a matter of right, there's nothing you can do, they have the right to set their own hours. But when you give a special permit, hours are typical for most boards when they're issuing permits. The other concern-
Unfortunately, you weren't here on the previous meeting to.
Right, but usually a lot of times boards adopt what the
It's-
petitioner says these are going to be.
All I can tell you is the board has already approved it as is, with the conditions that's on it right now. We can't go back. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just gonna say, I've been open in town for 15 years. I've never opened on a Sunday. I have no interest in opening on a Sunday. I'm only gonna be open the hours that I told you guys I would be.
Okay. Any other comments?
Is there a condition of canal and boarding animals? Because
The-
boarding animals is prohibited in Village Common, and.
That wasn't part of their application. Their application did not say they were going to be boarding animals.
But she did say verbally in all of the recorded meeting that she.
It's not on the application for a boarding, it's for services, to groom pets, period.
So if there are animals that are being, if it turns into a doggy daycare where animals are getting boarded.
Then again, it's like on-street parking. It needs to be addressed with the code enforcement.
But it gets very tough when you don't have it as a condition on your permit to enforce it.
Well, I don't know what to tell you right now. It was brought up in discussion. We had a previous hearing. We continued it. It was brought up tonight. There was no further discussion on it. We had closed the public portion of it, and this is where we are today.
But we're just asking that, because we're not asking for any new evidence, we're just asking that you put as conditions what they said.
We've closed the hearing. Legal.
And then you can reopen it by a vote of this board to add additional conditions, if that's what you want, that are what they said they would do, that's all.
The board can do that. The board can also suggest that the minutes reflect the considerations you made at your last meeting. So it's up to the board. You can take an additional vote to reopen and then
I'll leave it to the board.
discuss the approval.
You want to do that, or you want to leave it as is?
Add additional conditions.
I mean,
We're taking additional comments after we've closed the public portion.
public statement part.
Statement
There's
part.
no additional evidence, it's just, we're asking just to, that be incorporated into your decision, that's all.
so I think, so your suggestion is, I'm sorry, can you state your name?
Yeah, my name is Attorney Mark Bagley, and I represent Sarah Maney and her partner.
Okay.
On the right across the street. We have the most to lose here in terms of what's there. We don't have a problem with a regular grooming facility that's operating per the terms that they give to the board. But, once this permit is issued, I could buy that business a year from now, it runs with the land.
I don't have it on paper.
And I can a different operation. When the building inspector goes to enforce it, it's what's on the permits, and you can do it, and there's no conditions that limit your hours, there's no conditions that limit the days you're operating, there's no conditions saying that, you know, you do what you say you're gonna do. There will be no boarding of animals at the facility. If there are, then he can enforce it.
Melissa, may I caution you?
You can, yes, I was just asking questions.
Okay, since you weren't part of the
I know,
previous meeting, the public hearing,
yeah,
I don't know how far you can go.
and, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just asking questions. I wasn't part of the previous meeting.
Well, if you weren't part of all the meetings, that's fine. If you missed one, you can listen to the tapes and do that and swear
Right.
on the road
The
that you
Mullins.
were, and then you could vote.
No, I was part of the first meeting, but I wasn't part of the public hearing, so,
But sometimes you can vote and you
Pet care,
read
well, no.
read all the
this is
material
the
and listen to the
section.
minutes.
right.
And you sign an affidavit.
The Mullins Act. I believe it's the Mullins
Yeah,
Act.
come on.
Yeah.
And just to say what Mark brought up, we're not bringing new evidence. All of the abutters signed requests to have conditions put in place for external infrastructure, like fencing, cages, or any animal holding infrastructure, as well as concerns about overnight boarding of animals, or just boarding of animals in general. So that's not new evidence. Also, the business owners have said themselves that they don't intend to do any of those things, so we don't see the harm in the board just simply putting that in place as a condition, so that in the future, there's not some kind of an expansion that happens later.
Well, first of all, any expansion that would happen later on under a special permit, they'd have to come back to the board. So,
So what do we want to do? Just have it reflect what the minutes say from the previous meeting regarding hours?
hang on, here we go. Okay. So, it's my opinion that the vote stands, the meeting's closed. There is an appeal process if you care to use that. Otherwise, the board stands with its decision. And there'll be no more further discussion about it, and we've got other business to attend to. So, I'm sorry, folks. There is a process. You're an attorney, you're well aware of that, so if you, pardon me?
None of the abutters' concerns during the previous public hearing are going to be incorporated at all in the form of conditions for this permit?
That is not true.
Besides on-street parking. Do you have the previous letter that we gave you during the previous public hearing?
It's on file. Again, the meeting's closed, the discussion is closed. There's a process if you choose to take it. There's an appeal process that's,
Right. I mean, the problem in the appeal process is that it's gonna be, I'm just telling you, it's gonna be arbitrary capricious, and that standard is very tough to overturn. The protections that you have not given the town, any of the protections, if I buy that property a year from now, and say I'm gonna continue the business, and I start boarding, and I run longer hours, you don't have any conditions that the building inspector can enforce. And that's the concern that I have, that these neighbors are the ones that are gonna suffer. We don't suspect that she will, but this permit runs with the land. And if she decides to sell to me, that I wanna run pet grooming service, and I wanna behind the scenes increase it, you don't have any of those conditions on the permit, that the building inspector can say, whoa, wait a second, your hours of operation.
we're well versed on how zoning works and how the process works. We don't need to be schooled by an attorney right here tonight.
I'm not trying to school you, I'm just saying, I think.
Well, we're well aware of it. This isn't the first permit that we've issued. And there is a process. If you want to choose that avenue, you may do so.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, the grow facility. The select board sent us a letter several weeks ago wanting us to revisit the grow facility zoning.
In a residential neighborhood.
They wanted to look, I think they wanted us to look at it overall on whether or not we should allow it in a residential area or other business zones areas. Right now, it's only allowed in the industrial park, which is, and the only place we have an industrial park is off New Ludlow Road. So I'm just trying to look into the information you provided us, Ken.
Yeah, so this is a model regulation that was done by PVPC a couple of years ago. There had been some minor amendments, usually based on some up-to-date regulations that the Cannabis Control Commission has put forward, as they've introduced some new licenses particularly. I think as the board had identified at the last meeting, commercial grow is allowed with a special permit and special permit and site plan approval by the planning board in the industrial zone, and there are particular criteria as to buffering that's provided in the use table, as well as in the bylaw. Let's determine what that is.
So my experience with these grow facilities, they're all enclosed. Most of them are in industrial settings, converted industrial settings. And the state law states they have to be in a controlled environment.
Right, but there are some cities and towns that have private grow facilities, but they still need to abide by a controlled environment, cameras, a fence. They're still under regulation, and there's still site visits, things like that, but it is on private property.
So I say controlled, secured site.
Well, I think one of the key words here is on the third page. Halfway down, it appears that many communities have not accommodated these craft cultivators.
So what does that mean? What does that,
So a craft cultivator, I would say, would be more along the lines of someone that is selling to a a cannabis shop, like maybe Theory or whatever, and
so in other
I don't know
words-
the names
so-
of
So,
them.
so someone that had, someone
Or
that had.
shop, I should say.
Someone that had land that wanted to secure it and grow the product, manufacture it, alter it, whatever they do to it, and then sell it to somebody that, let's just use Granby as an example, that had a retail license in the business district. Okay. We're not looking at something that would say that they could grow and sell on site, or are we?
I don't know.
I look at craft as small scale.
Right.
So if I may,
Well, what's the parameters? That's-
the establishment, so Cannabis Control Commission obviously would be providing the license to the applicant, dependent on what the applicant brings forward. I recall from the letter from the town administrator, there was a conversation about microbusiness. There's a specific license that the Cannabis Control Commission would issue. With regards to craft marijuana cooperative, which is the way that it's defined, it's not microbusiness, but to address the craft. A craft marijuana cooperative is a type of marijuana cultivator that allows growers to join together and grow up to 100,000 square feet of marijuana plants among them.
Right, so they could have other plants and then like Red
So
Rock
that's-
Farm would have a section.
Wow,
with all
That's over 2 acres.
Right.
2.5.
I think the question for the board is if the board chooses to amend the zoning bylaw to address these various types of uses, like a microbusiness, like, retail. Again, your bylaw only covers, I think as I mentioned, in under 5.12, cannabis retail growing and distribution, there's only 4 different criteria for approval. But then you also rely on your table of uses, which only spells out the requirements for commercial grow operation, which, as mentioned, was a special permit site plan approval in the industrial district. So the question for the board is whether or not the board would want to introduce these various new uses that an applicant may be bringing forward to the town, because they would coincide and align with the licenses that are available at the Cannabis Control Commission. So right now, you have cultivator and you have a retail in your bylaw. That's all you have. So presumably, if the board were wanting to look at other types of uses, you can address craft cooperatives. You can address the independent testing laboratories, couriers, delivery operators, research facilities, the microbusiness, which, according to the Cannabis Control Commission, is a microbusiness is a co-located marijuana establishment that can either be a Tier 1 marijuana cultivator or product manufacturer, or both. So both cultivation and manufacturing would happen in that, and/or can happen in that particular facility, dependent on where it's allowed.
What does Tier 1 mean?
A microbusiness that is marijuana product manufacturer may purchase no more than 2,000 pounds of marijuana per year from other marijuana establishments. Let me see if I can find the Tier 1. There is a specific, it amounts to, I can't think of the top of my head.
So the state has changed the bylaws or changed they're issuing different types of licenses now. They've
And
This resource document is the initial one that PVPC provided based on the state's initial licenses. The state is now issuing 3 new licenses. So, but other than that, these are still licenses that are available by the state.
And like, what is the positive impact on the community for allowing this? Like, is there tax dollars? I mean, is there grant money? What is the positive impact on the community?
So typically, the community, that would be all handled by the select board and their host community agreement process. So an applicant would go to the select board and a host community agreement would, be the product of that meeting. But typically, up to 3% of the revenues, I think as I mentioned before, and when it comes to cultivation, it's the transactional amounts. And the state provides, because it is heavily regulated by the Department of Revenue, the state is the one that's going to be issuing the town the funds.
So
Will be
3% of revenue.
Up to, yeah. Dependent on what the town may have adopted. Because some towns are not adopting 3%, they're adopting 1.5%, 2%.
I mean, do we know, or could we find out actually the positive implications that other towns have had from these revenue sources?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, because there are communities that are now, this is about year 4 now of legal selling. And, there's a lot of good examples from right here in the Pioneer Valley, from Northampton and East Hampton, with regards to what those revenues for the town look like. Obviously, there are lots of legal things happening in the background with regards to that host community agreement. So we're really going to know after 5 years if a town that has, or a city has adopted a host community agreement with the applicant, or with, a marijuana establishment, what that relationship will be in the future. Is it only year 1 through 5 that you're gonna understand that those particular receipts will be coming to the town, and then the town will just receive the benefit of, the applicant or the marijuana establishment paying, real estate taxes?
Okay.
Versus the ones that are related to cannabis. I think we're gonna learn, because now we're approaching that 5th year and the end of our host community agreements, on what those revenues will look like in some communities. But there's also communities that are later coming on to, the discussion about allowing these in town. But yeah, I think that there are benefits, and I think that there are resources that show what those benefits are.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it'd be the benefit, just, the revenue.
Well, Granby is an agricultural town. We've had a hard time bringing business into this town because we don't have the infrastructure to support it, no water, no sewer. And we need a tax base, a larger tax base. I don't know what kind of revenue these things are kicking off. We talk about it's tax, it's up to the select board, but I'd like to learn more about it and see if it's what the risk and reward is, I guess.
Right, exactly, like what the benefits are and what the risks
There
are.
seems to be a lot of
Absolutely.
security concerns.
Well, I
So I
think,
think that'd be something that needs to be addressed. Especially because it's a small town, we don't have a huge
Right.
police force, and it draws a lot of negative people to the area.
I think that, for the cultivation portion of it, it is heavily, there is security. There's a huge security piece of it. But again, it is regulated. I mean, like I said, I just know, from learning about this through real estate, actually, just, trying to sell parcels that have individual cultivation, and it's not commercial cultivation, so. And it is, I mean, they put up the cameras, the fences, I mean, it's secure.
But that's for the individual consumption?
That's for,
That
no,
you're
that's not,
saying
no, it is a, it's an individual grower in a non-industrial area.
So small
There's
scale.
also
Yeah, small scale.
concerns, like there's a strong, I don't know if people realize this, but even the growing of it, if you grow over a certain amount of acres, the smell can be very pervasive.
Yeah.
It can be a problem. A lot of towns have had problems with
So
that. Maybe something.
there is,
You can say that, you can say the same thing about farms spreading
right,
fertilizer too. You know?
right.
It's got a strong smell.
I mean, I think,
I'm still open to it. I think we need to learn a lot more before we, and see how it applies to town.
And maybe we start by looking at this handout from Ken.
I can provide some other communities that have recently adopted or adopted amendments to their
Well,
bylaws.
I guess I'd certainly like to see that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I'd like to see where it's been adopted and where it's actually
But put into use.
put into use, where they've issued permits for this and how it's working out.
And maybe towns like Hatfield are more appropriate to Granby than town like Northampton, that's a bit bigger and
Greenfield.
doesn't
maybe.
align with the
Yeah.
views of the citizens of the town. It's not.
Well, they're still gonna get a chance to, if this board puts some sort of a bylaw change in place, that we're not the final say, we're just proposing
Right.
something, the town still has the final say, but, you know, the select board has asked us to look into it, we need to look into it. I think getting the mechanics around it is the easy part, as far as security and where it's gonna be allowed. I'd like to be able to speak to the benefit, if there is a benefit to the town, where the bylaws have been changed, where they've adopted this, and how it's working for them.
Yeah.
And
Look
then-
at the pros and cons.
Yeah, right, yeah, and then say, okay, does it make sense that we do that, and if it does, how? Is there anything we want to do to massage it to make it work, or we say, you know what, we can send a letter back to the select board and say, we don't feel it's appropriate, you know, we haven't gotten any positive feedback, or we have, in these other towns, it's working with them, we can limit, you know, let's say they chose a bylaw that only allows X amount of permits issued to do this in their town.
Mhm.
I think we were only allowing 2 retailers in town with our permit.
If that's
Maybe.
listed somewhere else, then it's not in your zoning, but if you have a general bylaw that's
I
suggested.
think it was dictated by the state, how many you could
Okay.
have based on how many liquor licenses you have.
That's right, there was something about that.
So, I'm just saying, there's all kinds of things we can put into place if we think it might be.
Has anyone approached the board about cannabis?
The Board of Selectmen, there was,
Nobody from here has.
no,
There's been
there was a petition that didn't get the required signatures
Mm-hmm,
about this kind of micro business.
okay. A petition for or against?
for the,
To have it put out on the town meeting,
correct.
as a town meeting warrant article.
Okay,
So the select board thought, well, he came close, or they came close, they got enough a lot of signatures that we should at least kick it to the planning board and give them some homework and see if it's something that we should
okay. I
pursue.
mean, if the residents of Granby are saying that they have interest in maybe changing the bylaws, and we can find out a little bit more information on the revenue source, I think why not? I think it could be a good thing for our town.
Yeah, we need a larger tax base, non-residential tax base.
I agree.
So,
And that's why we looked at the retail establishments. Actually, I believe we took 2 different votes, whether we were even going to consider retail. And both times have passed that we would consider, and we spent quite a bit of time drawing up a summary and bylaws.
Okay.
there's also another angle on this, that if you're already a farmer and you're struggling, that another product may help sustain the business.
Their livelihood.
Their livelihood, and so on. So I think we need to look at it with an
I'll provide the board, obviously this is not this is a little apples and oranges based on some of the other communities that have adopted, but East Hampton has widely shown the benefits or the revenues that have come from the various cultivation and retail establishments.
Yeah, but most, that's the other thing we gotta be cautious about. Most of those are indoor grow facilities.
That's true.
So they're in old warehouses that have been converted. It's a whole different ballgame. We're talking about, we don't have
We might
that.
want to look at towns that have the same crime statistics as Granby, and not places like East Hampton. I mean, I don't-
The same, what kind of statistics?
Crime statistics, because there is a big security risk, but, I mean, that's what.
They could use greenhouses. I mean,
I know, but I'm just saying that there's,
Yeah.
we're talking out, like Ken said, apples and oranges. They're converting old
Yeah, it's a much different community.
warehouses.
Granby.
I would want to look at some Hatfield or
Hatfield,
some other towns and cities in town,
Goshen.
not cities, towns in the Commonwealth that are doing it, basically open fields,
Yeah, what about
greenhouse.
Hatfield? Ken, do you have any statistics on Hatfield?
No, but I'm working with the town on some other projects that I'm sure that I can, figure that out. Having worked with the town of Blandford, who, well, they haven't necessarily gotten any revenues because they're still constructing their cultivation facility. But there's some, I think Cummington has an operating cultivation facility, so there's revenues that are coming to the town. I think also.
Maybe that new bylaw we passed
Ultra town, maybe?
that allows solar and agricultural to coincide.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think for the following meeting or whenever the board wants to schedule, this conversation, I can find that information for the board. Again, depending on, where the board goes with this conversation, right now you are allowing cultivation and retail in town.
Is anyone utilizing?
No,
You said-
well, back, that was a broad statement. We are allowing retail and the cultivation for personal use, correct?
Commercial growth operation,
Yep, but that's only in the commercial, that's only in
that's an industrial
the
zone.
industrial zone,
And cannabis retail commercial will only be allowed in general business.
correct?
So, you're allowing those types of uses, which typically are your retail stores that would serve cannabis product in the general business zone with a special permit.
Correct.
Similarly, a cultivation in an indoor facility in your industrial zone, whatever that looks like.
Correct. So
Right.
now we're talking about allowing it as an outdoor cultivation in a residential / agricultural zone.
Sure, yeah.
Well, we could
What-
still
whatever
have
that
the
criteria is.
stipulation that it be indoor.
To see how the security would work.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stipulations we can put on it. What's the benefit to the town? Number one. Number two, where else is it in the Commonwealth and how is it working? Number three, and what are the risks?
I think one of the other considerations, as I think Nita pointed out, was specific to the bylaw is silent on what would be part of an application process. Typically, the applicant, if they were like gung-ho about developing a retail space in your general business zone, would be coming with a site plan, a special permit site plan approval. You probably would just have what you typically would provide there, but then at the same time, they would just unload all of the requirements that are required by the Cannabis Control Commission. Your bylaw doesn't spell, things that may be related specifically to cannabis, like an operations maintenance plan or an odor control plan or a lighting, you find a lighting plan in a site plan review. But it's, the other communities that have adopted zoning bylaws for, development criteria for marijuana establishments, there's a little more, meat in the criteria and very specific to buffering, landscaping, if there's, if there's specific landscaping that you want between a cannabis facility and an abutter, or, the right of way.
I think once we get to that place, whether or not there's a benefit, then we can dive into the weeds and talk about, okay, if we're gonna do it, then these are the parameters or conditions we need to put around it. But I think we need to be up here first. I think we need to be looking at what's the benefit, what's the negative portion of this, and is it worth it? And if it's questionable, then maybe we take it another step and then another step and then leave it up to the voters. But if it comes up where it's, what's the benefit of us, for the town to allow something to come in that's gonna be more of a burden than it is a benefit, then we write that up and send it to the select board. And if somebody disagrees with us, then they gotta go out and get some more people to sign the petition. That's all. I think we keep an open mind about it, but let's take it to the first level. What's the benefit?
Yep.
What would be the benefit to have 20 more liquor stores in Granby? Or what's the benefit to the community? What's the negative portion of it? So I think we start there. Ken's gonna get us some more information, and then, and it might still be too young to know what. We may say, let's table this for another year or two until this other place is built that you're referring to, and the outdoor type cultivation. And
But we don't also want our town to miss out on the opportunity for that kind of revenue either, so.
Of course not. That's why we gotta start there and
Right.
see what the benefit is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the benefits outweigh and then it'll be up to the town to
Yep.
vote on it.
I agree.
And another thing that concerns me anyway, is if the Cannabis Control Commission is changing rules and regulations, and we move forward and we say, this is what we want to do, and all of a sudden we find out that the Cannabis Control Commission has said, no, that is not allowed. Like you said very early on, it's in the birthing state. Have to see how it's going to grow.
So you'll get us some more info,
I did
Yeah.
that way.
and then we'll digest this.
Yeah, that resource is specifically if the board wanted to look at some additional criteria for development. Typically, what would be included in a site plan review, like your solar bylaw, where you have very specific requirements as to what is submitted with a site plan review, and some of those additional findings that the board may want to make. But I can definitely find, some of these other external parts of having the cannabis business in town, what those benefits may be that could be similar to Granby.
Awesome.
Let me ask you this. Is there anybody that would do a peer review on something that's brought forward?
It depends on what the peer review is asking for.
Let's talk about just cannabis, not site
Yeah.
itself, but
I would.
odor, as Nita had mentioned, security.
The thing is, with the security, it needs to abide by the Cannabis Control Commission. So they're not going to approve anything so the board will have approved, or would be approving, something that is already in accordance or in compliance with the Cannabis Control Commission's requirements, or more.
Yeah, they set the minimum. I'd like to know what the minimum
Yeah.
is.
With regards to some of the other aspects, what I've seen, and these are other communities that have also utilized peer review for regular site plan review of things like a lighting plan. So there are definitely lighting plan consultants that will review how many lumens and what the angle of the light will look like. There are entities that may provide comments on odor. And again, those are recommendations, they're conversations that they would be having with the board. The board would make the final determination, similar to any other site review, site plan review. But you probably can find, for a majority of the criteria that probably are the biggest deterrents of cannabis, or, some of the biggest complaints about cannabis, that you'd be able to find someone to speak to those issues if the board thought that it was very important.
Okay. So we'll wait to gather more information.
Put it on the agenda for the next, you should be able to have some more info,
Yeah,
whether you have it all or not, for the next meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I think I'm good. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about it.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
You made the motion. You
So
second.
moved.
So moved.
Any further
We're
discussion?
moving.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.